All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, a theological treatise that completely flips the script on how we think about God, humanity, and, well, the entire universe.
So, right off the bat, the source document throws a wrench in a pretty big idea: eternity. It asks us to stop thinking about it as this, flat, endless line. Instead, it suggests it's something way more complex, more layered. And that naturally leads to the core question, right? If life is going to have any real moral meaning, what does that say about the kind of creator who made it all? So, let's dig into how the author tries to solve this massive puzzle. Okay, so to get to that answer, the treatise first points a finger at what it calls a central problem, these deep philosophical tensions that exist within traditional Christian theology. See, the argument here is that traditional theology often creates this huge, almost impossible gap between God and us. And when you have that gap, you end up with some really tough questions that are hard to answer. Questions about why there's suffering, what divine justice actually looks like, and, what the whole point of our existence even is. So, what's the solution? Well, the source offers up what it calls a single reversal in our thinking. This idea, which came from the 19th century religious leader Joseph Smith, basically reframes, well, everything. And you can see that shift right here. On one side, you've got the traditional way of thinking. You start with this fixed, perfect, static idea of God, and then you try to jam humanity into that definition. But the restored theology, it flips that completely. It starts with our eternal potential and then works backward, asking, okay, for that to be our destiny, what does God have to be like? It's a total change in the starting point. And the author claims this one little switch, this reversal, suddenly makes a lot of those tough questions make sense. Things like suffering, justice, our ultimate potential, they all start to click into place. The universe stops looking like a simple test where you either pass or fail, and it starts looking more like a cosmic training ground, a system designed for us to just keep growing forever. So how does this whole vision of the universe actually hold up? Well, according to the source, this new cosmology is built on three really powerful, interconnected ideas, or pillars. Okay, pillar number one. This one completely redefines what it even means to be God. It's not about some kind of random magical power. No, it's about a complete and total mastery of the laws of reality. And here's the kicker. It's a mastery that, at least in theory, can be learned. And this quote just nails the implication, doesn't it? If God's glory really is intelligence, like the source text says, then heaven can't just be some museum where you sit around and look at stuff. It has to be a university, a place of constant, active, endless learning and creating. To make this a little more real, the author gives us this great analogy of a master pianist. Think about it. God isn't some magician who breaks the laws of music to make a piano play. He's a master who understands those laws so deeply. We're talking everything from the physics of sound to the neurology of how music makes us feel, that he can create something unbelievably beautiful by working with those laws, not against them. All right, on to the second pillar, and this one gets into a big moral issue. The author basically says, look, any idea of God that makes him less compassionate than a good human parent just doesn't make sense. It's incoherent. God's goodness can't be something totally alien to us. It has to be the ultimate, perfected version of the best love and compassion we can imagine. And the source really contrasts this with ideas like predestination, the concept that some people are just created to fail from the start. The argument is that the real blasphemy isn't thinking humans can become godlike. The real blasphemy is picturing a God who would create a system where so many of his own children are doomed from the get-go. Now for the third pillar, and this one tries to solve a really cool paradox. If God is always growing and progressing, how can he also be the eternal, unchanging God that Scripture talks about? It seems like a contradiction, right? Well, the solution proposed here forces us to completely rethink what infinity even means. And to explain this, the text gives us this really clever goldfish bowl analogy. For the goldfish, the bowl is its infinity. It's the whole universe. Within that bowl, God is the absolute supreme being. He's our alpha and omega. But that doesn't mean there isn't a vast ocean, a much bigger infinity just outside the glass that we can't even comprehend. Okay, so for the final section, the treatise really brings it home and looks at what all of this means for us, for our lives. And it includes a pretty wild idea, a built-in explanation for why people don't believe. But before we get to the final conclusion, the source does something really important and I think really honest. It takes a step back.
It presents the secular counterargument. The idea that this whole framework, as beautiful and coherent as it is, might just be a story we don't actually need. So, the atheist perspective, as it's laid out here, is pretty straightforward. It says, hey, this theology sounds nice, it's morally appealing, but where's the evidence? The universe seems to work just fine on its own, right? We can explain things like consciousness, compassion, and creativity with biology and evolution. We don't need the extra layer. And this is where we get to what might be the most mind-bending idea in the whole thing. The author takes that very problem, the problem of doubt and disbelief, and flips it completely upside down. So get this. The argument is that if God's existence was totally obvious, like as plain as the sun in the sky, then true moral choice would be impossible. We'd all just comply. We'd be like robots. Real character, the argument goes, isn't built when things are certain. It's forged in the fires of uncertainty, where we actually have to choose what to believe. So this whole setup, this dual reality, isn't seen as a bug in the system. It's presented as the core feature. It's the very mechanism that makes agency possible. It creates this intellectual and spiritual space where we can genuinely choose to believe without being forced into it by some kind of overwhelming, undeniable proof. And so that leaves us with one last really provocative question that the source puts on the table. What if this ambiguity we all live with, the very thing that makes sincere disbelief possible, isn't a flaw in the universe that needs to be fixed? What if it's the entire point?